Hi, my name's Todd Applegate. I'm a department head here at the University of Georgia in the Department of Poultry Science. Been here for going on 5 years at the end of 2020. I became a member of PSA, I believe, when I started grad school back in 1993. So I was born and raised on a small farm in southwest Iowa. Very rural community, but close enough to Omaha to have a little bit of the big city. The town I grew up in was 1,300 people. My father's farming operation uh, included a farrow to finish swine component, and then we moved into custom feeding cattle. So growing up, I did not have much of an experience with poultry. I think the only poultry experiences I had were processing the spent hens from a cousin to fill up the freezer in the summertime. And then while I was in high school, I did a couple of 4-H exchanges. And that was my real first connection to Georgia and the broiler industry in Georgia, because I came, the family I stayed with was a contract broiler grower back at the time, just north of Atlanta, and spent a week or so with them. And so it was a little bit eye-opening at that point to get a different perspective on a different part of animal agriculture. So a lot of it was very similar experience to what a lot of our undergraduates are. At that point in time, I was looking, I knew the farm was not enough to sustain me and my two brothers for a livelihood. So I was looking to remain engaged in animal agriculture. And the ways I saw my career options at that point were to be the veterinarian, the pharmaceutical salesman that came and visited my father, or the feed mill manager. And I had a very limited scope of knowledge of what those career options were, and I picked the veterinarian route. So I looked around, got accepted into Iowa State, Kansas State, and University of Missouri. I ended up going to Ames, and it was really during some of my initial coursework that I was reiterated on where the direction of the poultry world was going as far as consumption patterns within the U.S. You know, I kind of tucked away in the back of my brain. I ended up taking a poultry production course, I believe, either my junior or early in my senior year. And it was really through those courses that I began thinking about it. But I think the fateful conversation happened with my beef cattle advisor, who saw me struggling to find an internship. And he commented to me that, hey, one of my colleagues upstairs has 6 poultry internships that they struggle to find students for. I know you took this poultry production course at one point in time. You better go have a conversation with him, because I know he can link you up with some opportunity. So at that point, I went and introduced myself to Dr. Jerry Sell. And I give him a lot of credit for kind of steering me in some positive directions, linked me up with an internship with a turkey company up in northwest Iowa for the summer. And it was partway through the summer that, some career pathways began clicking, and I was really liking my nutrition courses. I was liking what experiences I had in my short time during the feed mill. And so I called him back up over the course of the summer and asked him if I could spend some time working in his laboratory when I came back. So. It took me a while to be convinced first that the direction in poultry was the way to go. And I think it was the continued conversation with people, very positive conversations with Dr. Sell, and I give him a lot of credit for steering me in a lot of positive directions. And at that point, and still, in my senior year when I was working with him, I didn't have a full scope of what what options and career paths were available. I knew at that point that, formulating diets was exciting to me as a potential. I didn't have a full scope of what that looked like into the poultry world. Um, but I knew that to go in, I needed at least a master's to make myself more competitive to have at least a formulation job. And it was really then in getting into his lab, interacting with students coming from Spain, South America, Asia, and the US. So it was really also my first experience in interacting with folks outside of the US. It really opened my eyes to what more options were. At that point, I began becoming more interested in what we'd call this technical service type of position. And that led me more towards exploring PhD pathways. I knew I needed to go that particular direction. And Dr. Sell he was always matter of fact, and I always appreciated his approach to conversations with students. And he's like, kid, you can't get 3 degrees at one institution. I'm kicking you out. And he said it in a very positive way, and he made some wonderful introductions for me. I feel like I've been very fortunate that I've had wonderful collaborators and friends over the years. So I look at those as just kind of the pinnacle of our collective work together. I give my academic sister, Rosalina Angel, who I did a postdoc with. She was phenomenal at that stage to really set up my thought process of what it meant to become a faculty member. We built some wonderful collaborative research that has continued on well beyond that, but she really set that foundation for me as a young faculty member at Purdue. So those hold a lot of meaning to me, some of those collaborative types of things. I'd say the other one that really stands out in my mind was one of the review papers that I wrote while I was on sabbatical with the folks from Biomen in Austria, probably a little bit over a decade ago. And it was very fun in getting a better understanding of the private sector looking to put products on the market, what it took from a registration standpoint, and it was really that review paper was kind of the precipice of a lot of those conversations. I think it's really through the connections that I've been able to build through PSA that have really, helped me navigate my career. I look to us as our PSA family, and I look early on to some of those connections that I was able to make as a graduate student, as a young faculty member. I was able to capture a lot of that membership and the wonderful mentors that they really were in helping me have some discussions on career direction, how best to set myself up for some of those avenues that I then pursued. Also, I'd have to say it's been a wonderful collaborative community in that as we were able to pose questions across the industry to academia to the regulatory side, we're big enough as far as an industry sector, but small enough in terms of people that it creates enough forum that we're able to create some discourse and opportunity to move forward on some larger issues much more quickly than other industries might be able to. So it's been a wonderful sector for me, just from the people side of being able to create, adapt to change. And I think PSA really creates a wonderful platform for that, being a change agent across a number of different topics that affect the poultry sector. I'd say I love my time as a director on the board of directors. At that stage, I was frankly a little green and naive as to what it took to run a very large organization such as PSA, in terms of core staff were very small, but it's very much a volunteer-driven organization. But I have to say, I spent 3 years as a director, and it probably took me those full 3 years to have a better understanding and bigger picture of what things were affecting the association. So it made me hungry to stay engaged, at least later on, with the executive board. Really enjoyed my time there. PSA through the early teens of the 2000s went through some very substantial change, and so I'm very appreciative to my colleagues and being able to spend time with that wonderful working group to help move our association through some of those big changes, from divesting from FAS, moving part of the publication business at that point in time to Oxford. Those were definitely not easy transitions, but I think having that experience certainly helped me grow, helped me then look at what I was doing with my own career and what impacts I could have later on. Two things I think we're learning out of our COVID-19 experience. One really is how our food sector as a whole is structured. And if we look specifically to the poultry realm, we had been economically kind of 50% reliant on the restaurant food service sector and 50% on the retail grocery sector. But yet volume was a 25-75 proposition. So when that 25% was dramatically reduced, it had broad ranging effects on how our sector was structured. And that evolved and was a little bit different within different cultures, different countries, and different time courses of how this is progressing. So that was one thing really on how it's affected our entire economic structure. Two, really to what the consumer is now looking at, and predictions are that consumer is going to have a long-term look at how food is positioned as providing health to an individual. And that'll take on potentially some different characteristics, I think, in the long term, but that'll have some ramifications to us within PSA. And one of the things I think we have struggled with in adapting to over time as an association really is to really be broad reaching into the sciences that affect the poultry sector. I'd say certain things like economics, certain things such as consumer behavior we've touched upon, but those scientists involved in those fields are not necessarily poultry scientists. So we continue to try to reach out to those folks to engage them as we go through some of these transitions. And I think those are only a couple of examples. So I think we as an association need to continuously reach out as those issues morph and change over time. I'd say if you're going into grad school, make sure you take advantage of the wealth of folks' experiences that they have as potential mentors. Become engaged, get to network. It's a wonderful group of scientists that are out there across a number of different sectors. So not only will it help you understand your career pathways as options, but it'll also help you be able to navigate those as questions come up and position yourself on experiences to make yourself competitive into that space. The mentoring part of that, I especially worry about as students transition from graduate school into their first professional job. Sometimes that's an easy transition. It really depends on everybody's personality type, but I'd say don't be afraid to reach out. Folks are very willing to assist, and if they don't have time, they have a wonderful network as well, and folks they might be able to recommend as well. So that's the biggest thing I think I'd encourage you, the students out there, to think about as they go forward, and to thinking about how they're going to become engaged. So looking back over my life and career, I don't think I'd be where I am today without a whole host of people. I'd say, it was kind of that fateful conversation with my undergrad advisor that steered me towards Dr. Sell. I'd say it was that experience that I had and mentorship from Dr. Sell that really positioned me early on. It was my fellow colleagues and everybody I've been with through grad school that really steered me in certain directions. It was a lot of direction and industry introduction from Mike Loburn and being cooped up in a small Amish community that really got me excited about research. And that really steered my career one direction, I have to say, too. It's part of all of my academic family. I give a lot of kudos to Rosalina for guiding me, as I spent some time with her. And then afterwards, moving and transitioning to my first faculty gig with Purdue, really, I give a lot of credit, especially to Lai Adiola and helping me establish myself as a young faculty member. He went out of his way. I always remember that he sat me down and he was very matter of fact. Um, he's like, I know that they're going to offer you a certain amount. I'm willing to share my lab, share a technician. The thing is, when you come, you do the hiring, and priorities in the lab really are yours until you get tenure. And I think it was kind of that selfless behavior that really instilled in me, what I need to do as a person really to give back. So really, I look to what people have done for me along the way that really have steered me in some positive directions. So it's hard to narrow down on an individual because it's been a family of friends, colleagues that have really moved me forward. I'd say the one that I didn't touch on, I have to say, the whole way through, it's been my wife, Andrea, who has been very selfless, moving, changing career paths. I'd say she's been a rock. I never look like we're alone, or I never feel like I'm alone in this decision and where we've gone, because I've always had supportive folks within each institution, having Andrea at home and having this family of colleagues, which really is grounded from PSA's perspective to help me along the way. I look back at the legacy of those fellows, and it's very humbling. I know what impact those folks have had, not only on the association, um, but in the poultry sciences in general. As far as personally and professionally moving forward, to have been named a fellow, I feel like I bear the responsibility in continuing to give back, to make sure that we are a strong and vibrant association and discipline, that we can continue and morph and grow as the poultry sector continues to have issues, and some of those issues are becoming much more complex over time. So I feel like I still continue to have that particular responsibility to make sure we are having another generation moving forward to take up that baton.